Something huge is brewing as it's confirmed. A massive new report has just dropped surrounding the Blue Jays and one player in particular regarding a trade that has big implications going forward as it has fans very intrigued but also very split. We're going to break down exactly what this trade report is and discuss what it means going forward as one particular thing is confirmed. But not only that, we have a ton of other updates, including the Toronto Blue Jays making a move surrounding a pitcher we saw many times last year. He's gone. He's no longer with the team. You're going to want to stay tuned for that as well as a bunch of other free agency updates. But folks, before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage and aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of things to go over today, and something big is brewing as a new report has dropped surrounding a trade target that we've covered on the channel already. But now we have some brand new information to bring to you today, and this is from Jon Morosi. And let's start with this because it actually gets pretty deep, and then of course we'll dive into one of the moves surrounding a Jays pitcher here in a minute. But from Jon Morosi, the Diamondbacks are, quote, actively listening on Ketel Marte. The Phillies and Blue Jays are among teams to have checked in. Now, this is pretty big information for a few reasons. Now, when I made my video a week or two ago, it was a report from Bob Nightingale revealing that the Diamondbacks are very, very open to trading Ketel Marte. And then we kind of heard silence from there. Folks, Jon Morosi, fairly reputable reporter, despite what happened with the Ohtani stuff, has been great since then, has revealed that not only are the Diamondbacks actively listening on Ketel, but the Jays and Phillies are the two teams that have checked in as of late. And he actually went on to say, and we'll dive into a few different things, that there's a 50-50 chance that Ketel actually gets traded. Now, this has fans split for a few different reasons, because in theory, if they bring in Ketel Marte, it's probably because Bichette would be leaving. However, you can see this here. A lot of Jays fans are pretty excited about it. So Ketel Marte, just to give you guys some context, because I'm sure whether you guys watch some Diamondback games or not, he's an elite hitter, right? He ranks 9th in runs, weighted runs created plus, and 13th in F4 among position players since 2023. He has some of the most explosive bat speed in the MLB, an elite approach, constant ability to pull fly balls. He is, put simply, one of the most dangerous and complete hitters in MLB, right? So this is where things get interesting, because if you have to choose between Bichette and Ketel Marte, I'm probably choosing in a vacuum Ketel Marte. But the problem is, of course, you would have to give up lots and lots of assets to get Marte. But then, of course, you could talk about whether they're going to get Kyle Tucker, all these different things. But the fact that Diamondbacks are actively listening makes things very interesting. And the Jays are among only two teams that Jon Morosi noted to have checked in with Ketel Marte. Now, if you think back to, and he also said at least a 50-50 chance, potentially more. I mean, you think back to the Bob Nightingale report, he basically says the same thing. And, you know, you can see here, Arizona Diamondbacks all-star second baseman, maybe on the MLB trading block, and the Diamondbacks are highly motivated to trade him. And if they do so before April, they will avoid his 10-5 rights and full no-trade clause. Marte is owed $71 million through 2030, which is an unbelievably good contract. Like, this guy is elite. Let's look at his stats. Of course, he last year an 893 OPS, the year before 932, year before 844. He's been elite for a while, winning, back-to-back Silver Sluggers, back-to-back All-Star appearances, and at a contract that is one of, if not the best in baseball, right, among a few others, including the Shane Bieber one. Just kidding, they don't actually compare, but shout out Shane Bieber for signing with us and at a discounted rate and that player option opting into it. But you look at Ketel Marte, right, and again, can play multiple positions. You could, in theory, have Ketel Marte play an outfield spot if you want to bring Bo and Marte back. But my guess would be if they bring Ketel in, they're going to play him in the infield, probably second base, and then Andres Gimenez at short. And then maybe you could then, because you gave up assets to get Ketel, you then use that money to get Kyle Tucker, who the Jays are heavily involved in. And that's where things get interesting. That's where fans are pretty split here. And you can see here, let me know down below in the comment section, right? Out of these two options, which would you prefer? Sign Bichette for 8 years, let's say $28 million a year, or trade for Ketel Marte, who's under contract through his age 37 season, but is a better fielder, a better hitter. And I would argue in general, Ketel is a better overall player. Now, there's a lot of things to discuss with this. You don't have to give up assets to get Bichette. Bichette loves Toronto. He loves Vladdy. That's the pairing that got them to the World Series last year. The flip side, Marte is older, but he's a better player on a better contract. But then you have to give up assets. You're going to have to probably trade some of your top prospects. Probably Arjun Amala would have to be involved in this deal. They're not going to trade Trey Savage. They're not going to trade JoJo Parker either. I don't think they can until the trade deadline or after it because he was just drafted. It makes things interesting, and it's not something I'm happy I don't have to make the decision. if Bo Bichette wants to come back, you could still trade for Ketel and put him in the outfield, but I think that negates some of his, value. He's a fine fielder. But again, it's going to be quite the decision to make. Now, of course, again, you look at the way the team is positioning themselves. They're involved in lots of players like Tetsuya Imai, who's a starting pitcher. They're involved in guys like Kyle Tucker. Now they're involved in the trade market, or rather involved in the trade market, for Ketel Marte, who's an absolute beast. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Where do you guys stand with it? I personally, I'm fine extending Bo Bichette, but man, would having Ketel Marte and this team really open things up, and it truly would be like insane to watch. But he is approaching the wrong side of 30. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. He's a premier hitter in this league, and it's great to hear that the Toronto Blue Jays are actively involved and are among a couple teams that checked in, including the Phillies. And it seems now more than ever, the Diamondbacks are willing to trade him to get a haul. And let me tell you, folks, it would be multiple prospects you see on this list here. Could be something like Arjun Amalio, Hendrik Panago, Jake Bloss, RJ Schreck, a lot of guys, depending on what the Diamondbacks farm system is. I'm not too in tune with what exactly they need in their farm system wise, but of course, it'll be interesting to see there. Now, let's dive into a couple other things. So yesterday night, the Blue Jays placed lefty Easton Lucas on unconditional waivers today, or yesterday night. So per sources, he's expected to sign with a foreign pro team once he clears waivers. You have to assume here now that Easton requested this, so that way he could sign with the pro team. Probably not a ton of space for him on the big league roster. We saw him briefly last year. I remember there was times where after his first few starts, he was talking to Max Scherzer, how he could be an elite starter in this league, all these different things. And then he blew up and had a bunch of poor starts in a row. And then Eric Lauer basically took over from there and was dominant. They have a lot of fringe guys, right? Bowden Francis. I mean, I don't know. It sounds like I'm doing Eric Lauer a disservice by calling him a fringe guy, but I think he is at this point in the sense of, I don't know if the Jays are going to guarantee him a starting rotation spot to start the year next year, depending on who they get, of course, in the offseason. If you get Tetsuya Imai, you have your 5 starters. If you get Ranger Suarez, you have your 5 starters. But Easton Lucas, he's gone. And last year, a 6.66 ERA in 5 starts and 6 overall games. Of course, it was an interesting year for him. I mean, he's been around. He's 28 years old, right? It's not like he's a young guy. He's been around forever. He hasn't had around the minors forever, that is. He hasn't had the MLB experience that guys like Eric Lauer had. Like Eric Lauer had success at the major league level before, so you could probably project him as to why he did so good last year before he went overseas. The year before he played with the Brewers and then had an off year, didn't play, played overseas and then came back. It was pretty elite last year for the Jays. But let me know down below your favorite Easton Lucas moment. And there was a few of them. He had some really good starts and another lefty off the board, but the Jays have work to do. And all my focus now is, of course, on the moves to come. They're going to happen as the trade deadline, the winter meetings approach. Tetsuya Imai, keep an eye out for him. He is my number 1 target as a Blue Jay for starting pitching. But folks, let me know down below your thoughts on all this. Tons of things are happening. We'll keep you up to date every step of the way.